Today we'll be taking a look at the Flexispot ErgoX-PRO, which is positioned as a mid-range, all-mesh ergonomic office chair that comes in at around $600, but you'll be able to get it on sale for 20% off during Black Friday. Now, if you're not familiar with Flexispot, I've used several of their products in the past, and I've generally been pretty happy with them. I've reviewed their OC4 chair, which is kind of like a budget mesh office chair, as well as their E6 Max standing desk, both of which were solid products. So when they reached out about the ErgoX-PRO, I was curious to see how their new mid-range chair would stack up. So I've been testing this chair for the past 2 weeks, so in this video I'll be giving you my full review of the Flexispot ErgoX-PRO. We'll go over everything I liked about the chair, as well as the things that I didn't like to help you decide if this chair is going to be the right fit for you. Now I just want to mention that this video is sponsored by Flexispot, but all opinions you're going to hear are completely my own. They didn't tell me what to say, and I'm going to give you my full honest thoughts on this chair, the good and the bad. And I'm definitely not going to be pulling any punches just because they sent me this chair for free. So with all of that out of the way, let's jump right into the review, starting with the design. So when it comes to the design, the ErgoX-PRO looks like a typical split design mesh back office chair. It's a pretty classic design that's modern, simple, and clean, though it can be a bit boring if I'm being honest. There's really nothing fancy here. Most of these kind of split back all mesh office chairs tend to look the same, and the ErgoX-PRO is no exception. That said, despite this design kind of being overdone, it's versatile enough to fit in pretty much any environment, whether it's a home office, corporate setting, or even a gaming setup. Now the ErgoX-PRO version is only available in black as far as I know, which keeps things simple. And just as a quick note, the ErgoX-PRO is also available in a foam seat version, but I have the all mesh version, so that's what I'll be focusing on in this video. Overall, the design is exactly what you would expect from a mesh ergonomic office chair. It's clean and professional looking, but really nothing that'll stand out. When it comes to materials and build quality, the ErgoX-PRO is decent, but nothing that'll wow you. The chair uses a reinforced nylon and fiberglass frame, and it has a single piece aluminum base, which is a nice touch. For the upholstery, like I said, I have the all mesh version. This will be a little bit different if you have the foam seat version. But for this mesh, Flexispot calls this their Aero Weave mesh. It's very breathable and has a nice soft touch to it compared to many of these kind of plasticky mesh chairs that can feel really scratchy. Overall, I'd say the chair feels pretty solid, though it is mostly made of plastic with no metal components in the arms or frame. Now, one issue I had is with the stability of the armrests. They're connected to the backrest, which does have its advantages, but since it's made mostly of plastic, there is a decent amount of give when you're pressing down on them. I noticed this particularly when I'm trying to push off of them to shift positions or to get up out of the chair. The ErgoX-PRO has a 551-pound weight capacity, but keep in mind that this is just a measure of how much weight the chair can technically support and not an actual recommendation for someone of that size. Overall, I'd say the build quality is decent, but nothing that will wow you. At this $600 price point, I think there are definitely other options that feel a little bit better built. So now let's talk about the actual comfort of the chair, starting with the seat. Now since this is the all mesh version, the seat has good elasticity, but tends to be a pretty firm seat, though it is supportive. All in all, I think it's a pretty comfortable mesh seat. It has a nice deep waterfall front edge, which helps prevent contact with the back of your legs and promotes better circulation. Also, I really like that we don't have a foam pad in the front, so you don't get the issue that many mesh chairs have with the creasing effect that causes pressure buildup under your thighs. The seat feels pretty spacious overall. However, since it's a mesh seat, it has a hard plastic frame that's needed to wrap the mesh around. This makes it not great for cross-legged sitting since the frame will kind of dig into your ankles. So if you're someone who likes to sit cross-legged, then I'd probably recommend going with the foam padded seat version of this chair. You also get a seat pan depth adjustment feature with a good range of motion, which is important for accommodating people of different heights and leg lengths. Overall, I'd say the seat is pretty comfortable and supportive. Mesh seats in general can be pretty hard to pull off, but I think the ErgoX-PRO does a good job. The mesh is really breathable, so if you're someone who tends to run hot when you sit, then this will probably be a good fit for you. When it comes to the backrest, it uses a split back design with separate upper and lower back support sections. The ErgoX-PRO has an extendable lumbar support section with 5 different positions. It also has a 30-degree adaptive angle, so it can move with you as you shift around in the chair. Now, like most split back mesh designs, the lumbar support section can feel a bit pronounced, but since it's a softer mesh material, it's not pokey at all. It feels really supportive, and if you're someone who likes really aggressive lumbar support, then you have that depth adjustment to dial it in. You also have a ratcheting back height adjustment system, so you can get the lumbar support to hit you in the right sweet spot depending on your height. The mesh has really good elasticity, so I didn't run into many issues when it comes to feeling the frame underneath. Now, one unique thing about this backrest is that it actually has this spring dampening system that allows it to compress as you shift around in the chair. This gives it a much softer feeling, so the frame doesn't dig into your back. Now, at first, I thought this was kind of like a gimmick feature, but after using it, I found that it actually did make a pretty big difference. When I was stretching or shifting around in the chair, it almost felt as if the backrest had some flexibility to it, which is typically something you don't see in mesh backrests. So overall, I really like the backrest on this chair. It's comfortable and supportive with good adjustability for the lumbar support. The mesh also feels really high quality with good elasticity, and it's very breathable. When it comes to the recline, the ErgoX-PRO uses a synchro tilt mechanism. It feels pretty smooth and has a deep recline. You get 3 lockable positions at 90 degrees, 115 degrees, and 130 degrees. This makes it really versatile for upright tasking, taking a break, or lounging and watching shows. Now, the chair does have a tilt tension adjustment knob, but it's located under the seat. I personally don't like this design because it makes it difficult to adjust while you're actually sitting in the chair. This is something you typically find on more budget chairs, and I would expect better implementation on a chair at this price. So overall, I'd say the recline mechanism works pretty well. I just really don't like the positioning of the tilt tension knob. That said, I'm personally someone who tends to adjust my tilt tension pretty often, so it's a pretty important feature to me. But if you're someone who just likes to set it and forget it, then it's probably not going to be the biggest deal for you. Now, when it comes to the armrests, they're pretty decent overall, but they're definitely not perfect. There are things I really like about them, but also some things that I don't. Flexispot calls these their 7D linkage armrests. You get height adjustment, depth adjustment, and 2 rotation points. The arm pads and the arms themselves rotate basically all the way around, which lets you kind of position them however you would want. You can make them very wide if you're someone with a larger frame, or you can make them super narrow. You can also rotate the arms all the way around to get them out of the way when you don't want to use them. Overall, it's just very flexible. You can essentially get the armrest into any position you can think of by combining these 2 rotation points. The adjustment ranges are also really good, and the arms go low enough so that you can push the chair under your desk to save space. You can also tilt the arm pads upward, which is good for when you're using a mobile device or a video game controller. When it comes to the arm pads themselves, they're pretty comfortable. They're thick and have decent softness to them, so they're pretty comfortable when you really need to kind of dig your elbows into them. And since the arms are connected to the backrest, they actually recline back with you, which is good for when you want to use them in a reclined position. Now, my main issue is with the stability of the armrests. Because they're connected to the backrest and made completely of plastic, there's a good amount of flex when you kind of push down on them. Now, I really notice this when I'm pushing off of the armrest to get up out of the chair or to shift positions. Now, while the armrests in general are pretty comfortable to use and have good adjustability, I would definitely expect better stability for a chair at this price point. Now, when it comes to the headrest, I'm not the biggest fan. I mean, it's pretty comfortable to use, but I have a lot of issues with the adjustments and the stability. So you have 2 pivot point adjustments and a dedicated depth adjustment. However, you don't have a normal kind of independent height adjustment on this headrest. The height is entirely controlled with this pivoting arm, which I'm not a big fan of because it moves in a large arcing motion that will also move it forward and back. So you can't adjust the height independently. Because of this arcing motion, I also noticed that the normal position of the headrest is positioned pretty far forward. Now, this is fine for resting your neck against it when you're sitting in an upright tasking position, but not good for when you're reclining. I noticed that when I'm lounging and I just want to recline, the headrest is basically unusable for me because it's pushing my neck too far forward. And because the headrest is already positioned too far forward, I found the extra depth adjustment feature to be pretty useless. That said, when it comes to the actual comfort, the headrest isn't bad. It's a nice wide headrest, so you don't have to worry about coming into contact with the frame on the sides. The mesh also has really good elasticity and uses that same kind of soft feeling mesh that's comfortable to rest your head on. But that said, another issue I had with the headrest is the stability. The arm is pretty thin and long because it attaches to this thin bar on the backrest frame. This makes it a lot less stable and feels wobbly. There's just a lot of play that you can actually feel as you're shifting your head around. Overall, I'm really just not a big fan of this headrest design, especially for a chair that costs $600. For a chair at this price point, I would definitely expect a headrest with kind of more adjustment options and better stability. The ErgoX-PRO is available with a footrest version, but if you don't want it, then you can get it without the footrest and save about $20. The footrest is pretty bad in my opinion. Now, it's sturdy, but the padding is basically non-existent. It's really stiff and just not that comfortable to use. Personally, I also just found it a bit awkward to use. The way the chair is balanced, I can't recline back in the chair while resting on the footrest unless I lock the backrest first. Now, if you really like having a footrest for lounging, then it'll get the job done, but it's definitely not the best footrest I've seen on a chair. Personally, if you ask me, I would just skip the footrest and save some money on the chair. So now let's talk about value. The Flexispot ErgoX-PRO comes in at $600, positioning it as a mid-range office chair. Overall, I think this chair is pretty solid. It's decently comfortable and has good adjustability. However, I do think it is a bit overpriced for what it is. The build quality, especially with the armrests, headrests, and just generally plastic feeling components, leaves a bit to be desired for a $600 chair. I think the ErgoX-PRO would be a much better value if it was priced at around $400 to $500. That said, you will be able to get this chair for 20% off during Black Friday, which does get it under that $500 price range. Now, it's not a bad chair by any means, but it doesn't do anything spectacular. It's a very kind of typical split back mesh design. There are about 100 different split back mesh chairs on the market right now, and the ErgoX-PRO doesn't do too much to kind of differentiate itself to the point where it would justify the $600 price tag. But if the ErgoX-PRO is still out of your budget, then I would recommend checking out the Flexispot OC4, which is now called the ErgoX. It's essentially a budget version of the ErgoX-PRO that I reviewed on the channel a while back. The OC4 is also on sale for Black Friday, so I'll have a link to that down in the description as well. And if you have any questions about the ErgoX-PRO or want to know how it compares to other chairs on the market, feel free to leave a comment down below.